What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to the TCG exclusive of Mimighouls. That's right, this particular version I'm going to be showing you today does involve a very small Kashtira package. The whole idea behind the Kashtira package is you're going to be able to make your opponent trigger monster effects. In doing so, you'll be able to maximize the ability of a Kashtira unicorn to look at your opponent's extra deck and then take away those pesky one-offs, especially in a format where the Fiendsmiths make the extra deck incredibly tight. So whether you're going to get rid of their Fiendsmith Requiem, whether you want to hit that Transcendent Dragon, Trident Dragon, or even the Bident Dragon, it really can cause your opponent a lot of issues, because when you're banishing their cards face down, it is a lot harder for them to try and recur that resource. On top of that, throughout certain plays of the deck, you'll also be able to trigger your Kashtira Unicorn's effect at least twice before they've even been able to do a lot, and that straight away allows you to get rid of 2 core combo pieces or even a pesky SP Little Knight as well as the Requiem to cause them a lot of issues. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, I'm going to dive headfirst into the profile, show you what we've got and explain why we've got it. Now, I am fully aware that there is a Vanquished Soul build running around out there involving the Mimighouls. I have not seen the exact list as of yet, but I thought I would let the creator of that deck reveal it first so that everyone can see it through their channel, because I have no creative control over that particular build, and I thought it was so unique and very, very spicy that all the credit and all the views should technically go to them anyway. So, with all of that out of the way, let's show you what we've got. So we're going to be starting off with your triple Mimighoul Archfiend. This is the ideal one you want to be putting on your opponent's board to flip up, but it is also the ideal one that you can flip up, use to flip up cards, because on normal or special, it will allow you to flip up one of your opponent's monsters, and then that's how you're going to be able to trigger, ideally, either itself, or of course the card like the Mimighoul Cerberus. The other one that is your ideal normal summon is the Mimighoul Dragon on its own. Now obviously the Archfiend will require your opponent to have a monster in order to get the best out of it, whereas this one doesn't require them to have a monster but can also actually set you up to get your monsters. This will allow you to search out a Mimighoul spell or trap, whether that be the field spell, whether that be Maker, or whether that be the dungeons, which the trap card, sorry, which can be massively helpful. And the trap card is Mimighoul Runes. Then on top of that, we do play 2 Mimighoul Master. Now, this one, arguably, I can see being a one-of eventually down the line, depending on what other new support this deck gets. But the Master gives you that ability to flip up during your opponent's turn only, and unfortunately, it's only during the main phase. So the idea is, well, during the main phase to trigger off the flip effects of the Mimighoul, so it does mean that they have the ability to do stuff during the draw phase and everything else in between. Mimighoul Master does have a bit of a built-in protection effect that it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect while your opponent controls any face-down monsters, or you control a Mimighoul monster, which the idea is that if they control a face-down monster, they're going to try and flip it up to give it back to you. It will come back to your board, and then technically you'll control a Mimighoul monster. So it is a very nice control-esque deck, and I have put some cards in here to help you go second as well, in order to kind of crack back, get as much advantage as possible. I'm not playing Summoning Curse. That is the continuous spell card, which is currently like £10 a copy, which basically means every time, I believe it's every time a monster is summoned, the controller of that monster discards a card from their hand. I'm not about the hand loop in this entire deck. Yes, it can be done, but if you actually look at more and more effective builds, it actually doesn't rely on that card at all, and it's just a nice little niche side deck card as well. The last Mimighoul monster we are currently playing is Cerberus. Now keep in mind we only have technically 7 Mimighoul cards right now because this is the first wave of support. Once we get the second wave of support, it might get a little bit better, but right now we are seeing a lot of creative builds with the Mimighouls themselves, and I do think it is very fun right now to be playing a deck like this, especially in a format that's kind of gone a little bit astray with just being Fiendsmith Turbo and everything, apart from the WCQ finals, which was Ritual Beast versus Tempai. Then carrying on, one of the best cards of the Mimighouls is the Dungeon. Now this is the most expensive single card from the Mimighouls right now. You can probably pick up a Master for like £2.50, whereas the Dungeon is about £10 because it is that integral to the deck. So Mimighoul monsters you control that were not normal summoned or special this turn, so if your opponent flips up their monster and it comes to your board, it is not normal or special that turn, gains attack equal to its original defense. So when you're looking at stuff like your dragon, straight away, yes, your dragon will be flipped face up, but it'll be a 2500 attacker. And then when you look at stuff like your Archfiend, it'll be a 1900 attacker when it's been flipped up and then given back to you. So it's not just an open board of the 0 that your opponent can just smash through and do huge amounts of damage to you. Any player who controls a face-down monster cannot normal summon monsters, nor declare an attack with monsters that were special summoned this turn. During your main phase, you get to add a Mimighoul monster from the deck or graveyard to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. So obviously the idea is you want to try and give your opponent a face-down monster during their turn, and that's where your Mimighoul room comes into play, because when you do something like that, it means that they can't normal summon. So straight away, it means they have to go around a different route. They're not going to be able to normal summon a Dark Beckoning Beast, a Samsara Lotus, even a Snake Eyes Ash as well is going to be very, very tricky to help them resolve. They will need something like a Bonfire to special summon out a Poplar, and even then, they then want to try and get rid of the dungeon, because then they won't be able to attack with any of their special summon monsters. So that's why room is actually more important than I first thought it was, and it's definitely something that I feel that in the future it'd be really kind of cool to get a monster that lets you flip their monsters face down rather than just face up, because then you get them out of the Mimighoul dungeon lock as well, which can be a little bit of a two-edged sword. Because the field spell is so important, we are playing the one Terraforming, and then we are playing 2 of the Mimighoul Maker. So this one, you reveal 2 flip monsters with different names in your deck. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to special summon to their field in face-down defense position, and then you get to add the other to the hand. You can then special summon a Mimighoul monster from your hand. So this is the ideal risk of 50-50, is you ideally want to reveal a Cerberus and then a Archfiend, give the Cerberus to your opponent and special summon down the Archfiend to flip up the Cerberus. You'll then get an additional card from your opponent as well as the Cerberus, and you'll get the ability to kind of go into a rank 1 and everything else. That's the ideal scenario, but of course it is all dependent on a bit of luck. Sometimes it will end up being that you want to look at your dragon, you want to special summon down the dragon to get you a spell or trap searcher. It can have a lot of usages, and this card will get better once we get the new support. If that wasn't enough, it also has a secondary effect that if your opponent special summons a monster with Scepter and damage state, you get to banish it from the graveyard, target a face down monster your opponent controls, and change it to face out attack position or defense position. So again, that's really kind of cool that it lets you flip cards up. I'm hoping the second wave of the Mimighoul support will allow you to flip cards down, which would be really kind of cool, because then it'll basically just replace playing the Book of Moons in this particular deck. Then for the final Mimighoul card, we are playing Triple Room. Like I said, my first instincts on this one was it wasn't that great, but then when you actually kind of take it into account, it's probably one of the better cards that you're going to need. So this lets you special summon a Mimighoul monster from your hand or deck to your field, or in face-down defense position to your opponent's field. And then you can change one face-up monster on the field to face-down defense position, which is really kind of important, because then that will allow you to change a monster face-down, but you kind of want it to be a little bit faster, which is why it's not ideal to be rooms, and I'm hoping we're going to get spells that will replace this in the future. You also get to banish this card from the graveyard to target any number of Mimighoul cards you control, and you get to return them to the hand. You can only use one Mimighoul room effect per turn, and the reason this is so important is because you never really want your Mimighouls to be face down on your field, because then only going to happen is they're going to get flipped up and they're going to go to your opponent's field. You really want to have them flipped up on your opponent's field, come to your board, and then you're either going to overlay them, link them off, or you're going to banish the room to add them back to the hand, and then straight away you have the ability to go, okay, cool, special summon the dragon to your opponent's board, normal summon down an Archfiend, Archfiends flip the dragon, dragon destroys my opponent's board, and then my dragon comes to my side of the board. I can then make a rank 1 if I want to either go down a Zeus line of play, a direct attack line of play, or of course just go into a number 13 or 31 to give me that ability to have an additional quick effect flip up during my opponent's turn. Then for the Kashtira engine, of course, the most important one is Unicorn. So obviously the idea behind the Unicorn, like I've said, is when you're going to give your opponent a monster and then make it trigger its effect, it's going to allow you to look at your opponent's extra deck and then rip one for it, which is really, really important. On top of that as well, your Unicorn can search you out a Kashtira Birth, and I've also decided to go for one Theosis alongside with the one Fenrir. Now I was playing out, rather than playing the Theosis, I was playing 2 Fenrir, but actually I don't mind locking myself in XYZs, because more times than not you actually want to go for your number 13 and your number 31, but then on top of that as well, even just leaving the Fenrir and the Unicorn on the board can still be massively dangerous, because when you're flipping up your opponent's monsters and you triggering their effects, or the Mimighouls you've given them, you get to look at your opponent's extra deck, and then Fenrir of course can banish a face-up card that your opponent might have put on the board prior to that if you need to. I do like the idea of the way it works with Theosis, because yes, it will lock you out of special summoning from the extra deck for anything else apart from XYZs. So if you do feel that you want to go into a link monster, you want to do that before you activate the Theosis. But it's also one of the ones where it's like, okay, well, if I've opened up the Unicorn, then I'm going to search out the Birth as my first port of call. But if I already have the Birth, I can go for Theosis. And what I kind of found more and more in testing is if I saw the Fenrir, it didn't really do a lot for me, because I'm not going to banish the card that I flip during my turn, because my opponent's not going to have anything else on the board. I ideally want to be using it to trigger during my opponent's turn, so I want to see Unicorn more than anything else, and then I just like Fenrir as a very aggressive option that you want to get out of the back of having access to your Unicorn. Other than that, you do have the ability to link off the Unicorn and then bring it back with the Birth if you already have it, and then straight away you've got Birth, which is going to be set up that if your opponent activates a spell card, you're going to be able to technically DD Crow free cards from their graveyard, which is massively important. Moving on to the hand traps. So the hand traps of choice, we've got triple Ash Blossom. As you can pretty much guess, this deck doesn't really care about its graveyard, so you do need to play the best anti-meta hand trap of the format, and that is of course Dimension Shifter. Now keeping in mind this deck can be very subjective or subjected to a Mulchummy, because you will be summoning from your cast to your opponent's side of the field, and you'll be summoning from your hand to your field, so it can allow your opponent to draw quite a lot of cards. So you kind of want to be able to put them under a nice little floodgate of Shifter. You could put a Mulchummy in this deck as well if you wanted to and make it go more second, but I feel that it's probably a little bit suited better right now to go first in order to utilize the Kashtiras to look at your opponent's extra deck. I feel that when you go into the side game and you feel that you're going to be made to go second, that's when your Mulchummies can come in for your Kashtira package, as it will become a little bit less reliant on ripping your opponent's extra deck apart during your first turn, and less so during their turn as well, because the best thing you're going to be able to do is go Unicorn, look at your opponent's extra deck, and they'll probably chain an IP to go into an SP already, and then that's already going to be annoying enough to deal with. Then, of course, the other hand traps we are playing is triple Infinite Impermanence. And then just the generic spells that I'm trialing out right now is 2 Book of Lunar Eclipse. Now, arguably, this would pretty much be 3 Book of Eclipse if you wanted to. 3 Book of Moons if you wanted to. Or, of course, it could be Book of Eclipse. But I wanted to try out Book of Lunar Eclipse because it allowed me to target 2 face-up monsters on the field. So this kind of gave me that ability to double flip my opponent. So, for example, I could sometimes end my turn, give my opponent 2 Mimighoul monsters, or I give them 1 Mimighoul monster, they flip it face up, it comes over to my side of the board, and then, of course, they'll try and continue to make a normal summon, and that's when you're going to want to make rooms to flip it to their side, give them a face-down monster. But it's also one of the ones that, even when they normal summon a monster, if they're still under dungeon, you go Book of Moon, flip it face down, and it still means that they can't attack with their special summon monsters, so it then means that they have to try and work their way out into something like a Nightmare Unicorn to deal with the field spell first, and that's when you're going to want to start using cards like Book of Lunar Eclipse to make sure that they can't get to that particular point. Then, because we're able to forcefully trigger our opponent's monster effects, you can utilize a card like Triple Tactics, Thrust, and Talents to get the most out of it. Your Thrust can get you Terraforming, which will lead you to your field spell. It can also get you into your Mimighoul rooms. It can get you into your Triple Tactics Talents. Heck, it can get you into an Infinite Impermanence. And then when you get into the side deck, that's when it can start getting you direct access to board breakers like Lightning Storms. It can also get you into evenly matches if you're going second. But then if you're going first, it can also get you direct access to stuff like D barriers, DDGs, you name it. It can actually get you access to quite a lot, which is why the extra deck is, or the side deck is very, very flexible. And then the final card we are playing is the There Can Only Be One. Now, it is, of course, the one of that if you see it, great success. And I feel that when you're looking at stuff like the Snake Eyes matchup, the Yugioh matchup, the Tempai matchup, heck, even the Ritual Beast matchup, a card like Tikaboo, or There Can Only Be One to be specific, can cause a lot of issues. Now, obviously, it's not searchable technically in this particular version. You are going to have to hard draw it, so you could look at other ways to get hold of it if you wanted to, but ultimately, you do have another way where you can dump it to the graveyard with something like a Beatrice and then reset it with the Nightmare Griffin, but we're not going down that particular route because then that will involve the Fiendsmiths, and I didn't want to break the bank massively for a deck that is predominantly fun. Of course, when you are looking at Triple Tactics Thrust, this is a card that is relatively quite expensive, but I expect it to be a lot cheaper, and it will be a heck of a lot cheaper quicker than the Fiendsmith engine, because this one will probably be in the Megatins, whereas the Fiendsmiths probably won't be seen reprint for a long time. So that's it for the entire main deck. Now to show you the extra deck. So the extra deck has a very nice hybrid feel to it, but you also have the ability, if you wanted to be playing something like Super Poly, which can be in the main or the side deck. So for the XYZs, we do play the 2 rank 1s of the Embodiment of Crime and Punishment. Both of these are going to give you the ability to quick effect flip up your opponent's face down monsters, which will allow you to trigger off multiple Mimighoul effects and then give them to your board. So that's going to mean your opponent loses body resource, while also ideally being able to discard a card or forcing them to discard a card and you draw a card, and probably destroying their entire board with a dragon that you might have given them off of your Mimighoul rooms. On top of that, if you get both of these on the board, neither of them can be destroyed by battle or card effect, and your opponent is forced to attack them straight away. So it does give them as a nice little bit of a protective lock. The other rank ones we've got is the Fuko, so this is obviously ideal against the Tempai matchup, which I expect post EUWCQ a lot of players are going to be on. You've got your Lyrilless Assembled Nightingale, which is just your quickest way of being able to attack directly and then go into a Downard, leading into a Zeus. And then the final card that I am playing is the Red Ice Flare Metal, because the idea is if you need a time combat option, you can actually make the Red Ice Flare, and then I'm 99% sure that when you're triggering the Mimighouls on your opponent's side of the field, they will resolve on your opponent's side of the field. Yes, they do end up coming back to your board, but quite like the ability that it triggers Thrust and Talents, it will trigger the Red Ice Flare Metal, and you're basically able to burn your opponent during your turn, and then it kind of gives you that ability to get free burns, and then that will ultimately counteract the ability of them using a Lacrima to try and burn you in time as well. For Link monsters, we've got the one Relinquish Anima. Obviously, it's the deck of level 1, so incredibly useful. We've then got the one IP Masquerena, which can lead you into the standard SP Little Knight. So obviously, breaking the bank a little bit here, but I actually saw people selling this for £45 the other day, and I was like, yo, it's crashed massively. Get it while you can, but that might be because it's possibly due for a reprint in the Megatins of this year. Now, this can very easily become Nightmare Unicorn if you are on a much tighter budget. Then I do play the Moon of the Close Heavens, and the reason I'm playing the Moon of the Close Heavens is I still really want to be able to utilize this in order to use 2 of my opponent's monsters to get me into an Underworld Goddess, and I feel a lot of people will actually get to Moon of the Close Heavens, and a lot of people are like, yeah, okay, cool, they're going to go into Requiem, and then they're going to try and do the Fiendsmith engine, and you just go, okay, cool, Moon of the Close World, effect, target, and they'll be like, what Link 5 are you playing? And then as soon as this resolves, you go, okay, cool, use that one, and go into this one, and they're like, that just happened. And then, of course, for the other Link 4s we've got is the one Appaloosa, the one Beauregard. This is basically your Link version of the number 13 and 31 because it gives you that ability as a quick effect to flip cards face up, which is really important. And your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect activation. Great success. And the last card we're playing is the one Nightmare Griffin. Again, like I said, there are flexible spots in here, but the idea is that if you make an IP Masquerena and you put it up here, and you put the Nightmare Griffin down here, it's still linked, so you can still use both the effects. You then use IP, and then when IP links off with one of the monsters and goes into an SP Little Knight, it then becomes co-linked. Now, of course, if you want to make sure that this is co-linked, you do have other ways of doing it, so you can get other link monsters that point down, left, or right. Yes, you will give your opponent a link zone if you do it at the bottom of an Appaloosa, but the reason of trying to make this with a co-linked option is that you're going to want to bring back a spell or trap from the graveyard. So it's very specific when you do something like that, but the idea is that you're going to Griffin lock your opponent, as well as being able to get some access to something like a Tikaboo that they might have destroyed previously, or ideally you're going to be going for something like a Mimighoul Rooms as well. So that's it for the entire main deck and the extra deck. Like I said, there is flexibilities. I will also put the deck list in the description below so you can see it, but I'm also going to be making some adaptations to it so you can see a different variant of it. There will be some side deck options in that deck list as well, and it will also involve the Super Poly targets that you can be playing as well. So it won't involve every one of the cards that I've shown you here, because I'm going to be showing you what you would take out for the Super Polys. I think that might be a little bit more effective than just showing you the deck list outright, because then it's basically just repeating what I've shown you in the video, whereas showing you the deck list will show you the baseline basics. So the deck list will show you a side deck option as well, and just kind of what you would take out for a Super Poly, so you can see a different variant and some different options that might be accessible to you. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. If you do have any questions, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to do that for you. We're also going to be having a Magical Musket Fiendsmith build coming up for you shortly as well, alongside an Exodia build, and of course my EUWCQ Yubel Fiendsmith list as well, so you can kind of see how it adapted from the previous version and just how well it did. I'm also trying to get hold of one of my friends that actually went incredibly well and went X3 day 1 with a Whitewood Dark Magician build, which was incredibly spicy, and he actually explained it incredibly well. So I'm hoping they're going to be able to record that video for you and then bring it out so I can show you exactly what it is, because it was very spicy, and the fact that they went X3 in this particular format was amazing as well. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.